Here's another one that will drive any manager crazy, is having to worry about what your people say to other people or agencies that come into the store or professionals, whatever the case may be. When I was a clerk in Finest, we had a dairy clerk that was working a dairy case. They didn't have dairy managers back then. Um, the dairy clerk was working on one end of the case and blocking it down, and the Board of Health had come in and started working from the other end of the case and pulling through. And after he had found about 30 items or so that were out of code, he calls over the store manager and says to the store manager, yeah, he says, there's a lot of stuff in here that shouldn't be here. It's all past the sale date. So the store manager yells down to the clerk on the other end of the aisle and says, hey, you got to come down here. He says, you have a problem down here. And the guy yells down the aisle. He says, what's the problem? And he says, well, they're finding a lot of stuff down here that's out of code, and you got to come, take care of this. This stuff can't be in the case. It's a poor reflection on the store manager to begin with. I'm glad I wasn't him that time. And the clerk goes, tell him don't worry about it. He says, I'll get there when I get there. I'm done working down this end now. I can't be in two places at once. So you can imagine then how the Board of Health guy was with ripping through that entire area. You don't want to have a Board of Health person on the wrong side, just like you don't want to have weights and measures people on the wrong side. When I worked in ShopRite, I had an assistant manager who, for some reason, thought that people weren't allowed to leave the store if they were on break because it was time paid by the company. And he considered that because it was time paid by the company that they were taking their breaks, that they weren't allowed to leave the store because we determined what they were allowed to do because it was our time and not their time, which is totally ridiculous. And he had this thing about people going to the bathroom, and this one girl was constantly wanting to leave the register. She was a cashier and wanted to go to the bathroom. And he got to the point where he started telling her that she couldn't go to the bathroom, that she couldn't leave the register to go to the bathroom. And she happened to be on one of those work programs from the school. So she would get out of school early to come and work, and had to work a certain amount of days and times in the store, and that was part of her credit for schoolwork. And so the teacher came in one day, and the guidance counselor, somebody came in and wanted to, they came and did report cards on the people that were on those programs. And he tells this person that was doing a review for this one girl that we don't let her leave to go on break because when she does, she goes down the street and crosses over the bridge and buys drugs. So naturally, the teacher went back and spoke to the mother and told the mother that the daughter is supposedly going across the river and buying drugs. And then next thing you know, I get called upstairs, and the owner wants to talk to me about why my assistants are accusing people of going over and buying drugs. And I said, I know nothing about it, and I have to go and talk to this assistant manager who made this accusation and tell him that you're not allowed to say those things. And he goes, well, it's true that her boyfriend is a drug addict, and he comes over and gets her, and they go over and they buy drugs. I said, well, you can't say that because you're defaming her character. And sure enough, the lawyer started contacting the store, and the owner had to pay $10,000 as a fine, as a settlement to that mother, for what this dopey assistant said. And yeah, he still works there. Some of the stranger things that give us store managers headaches, that people think that we should be in control of, that we really don't have control of unless you're with those people 24 hours a day. And that wasn't my bag.